Hello, my name is Nishant Selvam and this video is a full-length detailed presentation of my final project for CSCI E90 Fall 2018. If you are interested in a short summary of this project, you should look at my other video titled CSCI E90 Short Summary, which is a much shorter version of this project. So in this video, I'm gonna review the project goals and the architecture, and I'm gonna set up the AWS components from scratch, so that if somebody is trying to replicate this work, they can do it by reviewing this video. So the goal of this project is to build a text-to-speech serverless application using Amazon's Poly service. Amazon AWS provides a service called Poly, which would turn text into audio, and I'll be using that for this project. And I want to make this application scalable, and thereby I'll be separating some of the processing components in this project. Like for example, I want to separate the request handling from the actual process of converting the text to audio. So I aim to use async mechanisms like SNS, which is a messaging system service by AWS, so that we can keep these two processes separate. So here is a typical workflow for this application. Users would upload text files for which they need audio conversion into a public S3 bucket, and this action will trigger a Lambda function called request handler. The request handler Lambda function, it would log all the incoming requests to a DynamoDB table, and then it would post a message onto an SNS topic. And the second Lambda function, which is called text to speech, would be a subscriber to the SNS topic, and for each message, the Lambda function text to speech would fetch the request details from the DynamoDB table. The request details would ideally have a request ID, the text file which needs the conversion, and the status of the conversion process, and the resulting audio file. So the Lambda function would fetch the request ID and the text file, and it would read the text file, get the audio from Amazon's Poly, and it would upload the resulting audio file into an S3 bucket, and it would update the status to completed in the DynamoDB table. So my original idea was to build a REST service which would basically look at the DynamoDB table and provide a list of requests and their statuses, but due to lack of time, I was not able to implement the REST API. But the idea of having a DynamoDB table was to keep track of all the requests and their statuses. So so next I would like to go over this implementation step by step, creating all the required components from scratch, and at the end we can see this see a demo of how this works, right? So the first step I'm going to do is to create an S3 bucket. So I'm on my management console for AWS, and I'm going to create a bucket named called TTS for text to speech demo, and I'm going to create this bucket with default con. Oh, this thing already exists. I'm going to call it TTS demo 1. I'm going to call n servum TTS demo. Right, so we have a bucket here, and I'm going to make this bucket public, just because of the fact that users could place text files into this bucket for which they would need conversion. So I'm going to go ahead. This is actually blocking me from making this bucket public. Confirm. Now we'll go back to ACLs, and this bucket is public. Can list and write. Alright, so this S3 bucket is now public. Next, let's move on to creating the DynamoDB table, which will actually keep track of all our requests. So I'm on the console and I am under DynamoDB. I'm going to create a table for myself, and I will call this TTS demo again. And the key that we're going to partition would be ID, and it would be a string because I'm going to use UID to generate unique IDs, and I'm going to keep the rest of the configuration as default. Alright, so just to review what I plan to keep in this table. So this table has the ID, which is a unique ID for every request, and a status for the incoming request. When the request is initially logged, it would have the status as pending, and when it is completed, the status would be done. Then I have a text file field, which is basically the name of the file in the S3 bucket for which conversion needs to happen, and the final field called audio file is the field which says what's the final output, or the name of the final output file which has the equivalent audio. Right. Let's move on to the next component we need, which is an SNS topic. So as per our design, we want to keep the two Lambda functions separate, and the first Lambda function would post a new message into an SNS topic as soon as a new request arrives. So I'm going to create that topic here. So let me go to SNS, go to a new window. I'm going to create a topic. I'll be calling that as TTS demo again. That's the convention I've been following. So currently we do not have any subscribers here, so I'm going to be creating subscribers. One of the subscriber to this would be our Lambda function, which converts text to audio, and I'm going to create that subscription once I have the Lambda function. Alright, so I think that's all we need here. So let's move on to the core components in this architecture, which are the Lambda functions we have. So the first Lambda function is the text handler function, which basically handles all the incoming requests, and what this Lambda function would do is basically log each request into the DynamoDB table we created, and then add a message onto the SNS topic we created. So and this Lambda function would be the Python code, and here is the source code for that. Let's review this code. The entry point for this function would be the Lambda handler function, and in here, since this function could be triggered whenever user inputs one or more files, what I want to do is I want to go through the records in each event, and I want to get the name of the file the user uploaded, and here I am generating a request ID, a unique ID for this request that came in, and the text URL that we're going to input in the DynamoDB would be the key or the file name. The initial status of this request would be pending. Right. So once we have all that, the log request, we want to log the request first. In here, basically, we are going to add a new entry into a DynamoDB table, and the entry would have the request ID, the status, and the text file. And I'm using Boto3 library to basically initialize my connections with DynamoDB as well as the SNS topic. So once we have logged the request, we want to then post or add a notification to the SNS topic so that the actual conversion process, which is handled by another Lambda service, happens. So what happens in add a notification is again pretty simple. I'm basically publishing to this SNS topic, and the message is nothing but the request ID. Alright, there is one thing that I need to change here. We need to get the actual ARN for the SNS topic that we just created. This is the one. So if you notice, I've currently kind of hard-coded the topic names and the ARNs, and the name of the DynamoDB table. I kind of actually missed that. So go back to DynamoDB. The table where we will be logging our request would be TTS demo. I'm gonna put that in here. Right. So as I was saying, I have hard coded all these values in the Python code itself, but it would have been better if these were environment variables. So this could have been, I could have changed this without updating the function code. But that's my source code for the first Lambda, which is the request handler. Let's also review the source code for the second Lambda function, which actually does the conversion. Right. So this is the entry point for this function, and what it basically does is it subscribes to the SNS topic, and for the message that it received, it basically retrieves the base request ID, which is actually part of the message, right? And once we have the request ID, it fetches the request from the DynamoDB table, which should be TTS demo in our case, and it basically fetches the request details from the table, and it basically fetches the text file associated with the request and reads the text contents of the text file, and in here it uses Amazon's Poly service to synthesize the speech, and I'm currently using Joanna, which is one of the personalities for the voice conversion, right? So we get the audio file, and basically what happens next, we use Amazon's service to get the audio. Basically what happens next is it's going to create an MP3 file on the local disk, and then that MP3 file is going to be put on the same S3 bucket with public read ACL, and I'm setting the content type here. Once the file is uploaded to S3, I'm updating the status of that request to done, and I'm also updating the audio file name in the DynamoDB table as well. So I want to review the few things that I have here. I need to update this with my so this is the name of the answer TTS demo. I don't think that was there here. So like in my first Lambda, I'm using Boto3 again to access S3, Amazon's Poly service, as well as the DynamoDB. So this is the source code for my second lambda function. So now let's go ahead and create these lambdas in AWS. I'm in the console here, so I'm going to create a function. This is my first lambda. I'm going to call it TTS request handler demo, and the source code is in Python 3.6. and let's talk about the roles. So the two lambda functions are going to be accessing a set of components on AWS. One is the lambda functions need to read and write into S3, so I have S3 full access. Then the lambda functions are going to again be reading and writing into DynamoDB. That's one of the accesses I provided, and the second lambda function should be able to access Poly, and it should be able to subscribe to SNS full access. So what I did is I created a custom role called TTS, and I've attached these policies that I need, and I'll be using this role for both of my lambda functions. So let's get back in here. Here is the request handler lambda, and I'm going to be choosing an existing role which is TTS and be creating the function. So what I want to do now is go back, update the source code of this guy. So I'm going to be deleting that, and here is my request handler, right? So this is fine. So lambda function dot lambda handler is my entry point, and I'm going to leave it as is. Then I'm going to come back up, and the next thing that we need to do is add a trigger for this request handler, which is basically a put action into our S3 bucket, right? So I'm going to scroll down wherein we configure the trigger. So the bucket that would trigger this is Ensylum TTS demo. This is the bucket we have for our text files, and I do not want all the events to trigger this thing. I just want when somebody adds a new text file, that's when I want to trigger this function. And one other thing is, since I'm using the same bucket for placing my MP3 files, I do not want this lambda to be triggered for the MP3 files. So I'm going to say only when the name is .text, I want to call this I want to trigger this lambda, right? So with that, I am going to save. I think it's already saved. That's my first. Okay, it says unsaved changes. So probably what I'll do is, how do I save that? Okay, so I had some issues saving this, and I figured that out. So I was able to update the source code for this lambda, and we have the S3 as one of the triggers. And what I want to do next is be able to test this lambda function before we proceed. Right. So what I'm going to do for that is basically go back. I don't want that. Yeah, I want to disable this for a moment, just so that I can place a test file in this bucket. So I have a local test file, which I'm going to place it in this bucket. So what should happen is once this lambda function is triggered, I want to be at least able to see a new entry in this DynamoDB, right? So for that, I'm going to use the test feature here. So this is our this is our request handler lambda. So I'm going to configure a test for this, and the test should be I'm going to use an existing template for Amazon, which is an Amazon S3 put. So what we need to do here is basically update this to our bucket, which is nselvum TTS demo. And I will, in here I'll say my file name is hello.txt, right? So I created that. So I'll just call this as test1. Alright, and I'm going to test this. So my test ran to completion, and here it say, so this is what basically comes from my request handler. So when I go back to my request handler, so at the end I'm just basically logging the request ID, which is basically is what we see here, right? So but what should have happened is we should see, yep, so as we see a new for the, let's go back to our test. So that was the request ID, start with 4CE, which actually matches the request ID here, and the status is pending, and this is the text for which we need the conversion. So one other thing that should have happened as part of this is a message should have been dropped on the SNS that I could have tested by creating a email subscription, but I'm going to skip that for now and assume that that part works. So after this, I'm going to move on to creating my other request handler, my other lambda function, which is text to speech. Let's review that quickly here. So this is the entry point for this function, and I think we discussed this, and all that happens here is this is converted into audio, and at the end of it the audio file is placed on the S3 bucket, and the table status is updated in the table. So I'm going to copy the source code, but before that I need to create it. So I'm creating this from scratch. TTS conversion demo is what I'm going to name it, and that's a Python, that is in Python, which is an existing role that we created earlier, and I'm going to create this function, right? And what I want to do is I want to update the source code for this guy, save it, right? And we should add the trigger, which is SMS in this case. So we want this should be triggered whenever there is a new post on this topic that we created, this TTS demo. I'm going to add that, right? So what I'm going to do is basically in order to test this, let's go with the same steps again. I want to configure this. The template I'm going to use is S3. SMS. I'm going to name this test1. So I need to update this with the ARN for my topic, and for which I'm going to jump to my SMS screen, copy that, ARN, put that in here, come back here, update the topic, that's my topic, and I'm going to update the message. So the message that we put on the topic is nothing but the request ID, and since I already have a request ID here, what I'm going to do is copy that, get back here and update that. Alright, so hopefully this should be enough. Create that. So now I'm going to test this lambda function. Okay, so this ran into failure. Okay, so I think I made a mistake when doing this. So getting back to our source code, so my function that needs to be called is the handler. So I'm going to save that. Let's go back and test this. So I had made a couple of mistakes as part of the test. I didn't have the correct message, which is the request ID, and then it had not updated the ARN here. So I updated that just now, and I hope that fixes the problem. So let's run this test again. Okay, now this time it ran to completion. So basically I'm seeing some logs. So what ideally should have happened is when I go back to this table and I refresh, I should see the status to done and a resulting MP3 file, which is good. And then at the end, if we go back here and refresh, I should see an MP3 file, and we should be able to play that, which is great. So those were the two lambda functions which are core to my design, and we were able to test each of them separately. I think that should be all that is required as part of this. So what I'm going to do is basically test this from scratch, from the beginning. So I have a wiki.text, which is some text that I copied from Wikipedia, and I'm going to upload it in our bucket. Right, so I'm going to take that, put it here, upload. So let's see if that request was logged. Not yet. Okay. So I disabled the trigger for my request handler lambda. So that's the reason I was not seeing the workflow happen. I enabled it right now. I'm going to save it, and I hope this works. Right, so I'm back to S3. I'm going to just delete this. Just sanity testing, go back to the items that we have here. Just that one. I'm going to upload this file again. So we have wiki.text. Yep, right now we have wiki. We have a log line for that, and it ran to completion already. Status is done, and we should have an MP3 file when we go back here. Yep. So if I play that,
controllers of personal data must put in place.
right. So that was a demo, and kind of setting this up from scratch. That's the detailed instructions I want to go through, and I hope this was detailed enough so that somebody trying to replicate this would have been able to do this using my video. That's about it. Thank you very much.